Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Phil and Sam for another spoiler discussion on Ahsoka. This is part 3 of the series, Time to Fly. We're talking about Bond, I almost said Time to Die. That's a quote from No Time to Die. No, that would be the wrong thing. But we are here talking episode 3, part 3, chapter 3. You guys noticed that all the Star Wars shows are getting different Kenobi episodes or parts? I can't remember, but yeah, it's always fun doing the artwork until the first episode comes out because you don't know what's going to be. But aside from that, how are we all doing tonight?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I mean, chuck this episode on nice and early with my cup of coffee. Shorter than last week's epic double bill, but a lot of good stuff. I'm looking forward to chatting about it.
Yes, I'm good too. I guess it's weird today because unlike basically every other Star Wars show that I've done, I decided not to watch it on my lunch hour, and which I probably should have because of how short it was. But I was like, you know what? I'll wait. I'll watch it with tea, and I'll watch it on my actual, TV. So I did that. So I watched it quite late, like only a couple of hours ago. But no, I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it so far, and glad to be back as well.
Excellent. Yeah, it's one of them where I thought you were about to say the same thing as me then. And this was the first one I got to watch before work on a Wednesday. I say that not even smugly. I got tipped off that it was going to be 30 minutes long. So Wednesday's my one office day. I start at 8 a.m. on the dot. So, back on the old uploads. I couldn't ever watch them early. I got up at 5:30, my backup alarm at 5:40, watched this, then went to work. Glad it's 30 minutes, dreading the next few weeks of when it's going to get longer and the times we're going to have to be up. But I've got to say, watching it at home on the right setup, not on a computer screen on my lunch break, great first way to watch it. Very, very tired, though. Very tired. And I can have it too loud because I'm going to wake the house up. But got a few people in the comments. We've got Dave, we've got Martin as well. Lovely to see you both. And then for everyone watching at home, and if you're not watching live, if you're watching online, comment with your thoughts on Ahsoka, what you thought of the first couple of episodes, what you thought of today's episode, where you think the series is going to go. If you're watching live, you can comment along with us. It's a spoiler discussion. Nothing's off the grid. And as always, if you want to find out about more stuff, hit the like button, do comment, and subscribe because Ahsoka's not going away. We've got a lot of things happening at the moment on the channel. Tomorrow's the Film Festival announcement. We've got David Fincher retrospective every Monday. We've got Ahsoka every Wednesday. Things are getting busy again, which is really good. And you know what else is really good? This bloody series in today's episode, which we're going to dive into. Simon, we're going to jump to you first. We didn't get you on last week. We've got Dave with his immediate thoughts. Loved the spacewalk, loved the whales, loved it. He's run out saying the word space. just quickly, Sam, your first thoughts on episode 1 and 2 very briefly. I know you were commenting along. It's always good to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. With the person who has not got the full background of Clone Wars and Rebels and all the other stuff, it's an interesting perspective for me. Obviously, I know enough about it. I've watched the first 2.5 seasons of Clone Wars. I've seen the last few episodes of Clone Wars. I've seen 1 or 2 episodes of Rebels, and I know the gist. So I know who the characters are, and I knew that going in, which is great. What I love about this show is that at least all the lead kind of heroes, I at least know all the actors in it as well. So it's kind of like, right, I've seen you in something before. I already feel something for you already. Never mind this character that I'm kind of still new to, like a Hera, for example, who I really don't really have any connection with because she's played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I love her, and I really like her character as portrayed by her. But yeah, in terms of the story of Ahsoka so far, because we know it's leading to a film, I'm kind of interested in where the series is going to kind of leave us. Obviously, the main thing is searching for Thrawn and hopefully Ezra as well. And I'm enjoying kind of the time that they're giving to the characters to kind of not only bring them back into the world, but bring them into live action, introduce them to a lot of people. There was something that I've been kind of dying to say, but there was I'm at Star Wars Celebration. I was in a queue, and I think it was when I tried to get into the Ahsoka panel in Twin Suns, and I didn't get in. But I know there was a group.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but there was a group of of young girls who I think were teenagers, but I think there was maybe a couple that were in their early 20s, and they were from America, and they were saying, I don't think anyone should be going into this panel and to see any Ahsoka stuff if they've not watched every other bit of. If they've not watched Clone Wars, if they've not watched Bad Batch, if they've not watched Rebels, they should not be going in. And I was just stood there, just like, all right, okay. I mean, it doesn't look like I'm going in anyway, but okay. But it was just really funny, and that's kind of been that thing that's just been in the back of my mind throughout this whole thing, because I'm like, as someone who hasn't seen it all, I'm really enjoying it and I'm liking it. So everyone else should be afforded that chance. And I think, that's when I'm like, I worry about the gatekeepers of the fandom who are very much like, you've not seen everything. Hopefully one day I will catch up. But I really love these first two episodes, and luckily this latest episode as well is just kind of added to that exceptionally. So actually, like I had such fun with this one, and again, I think it's just giving the time that's needed, and then knowing, okay, here's the right time to end, and we'll begin again next time.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, because one of my sisters texted me. She's never watched Rebels. She's not watched Clone Wars, Bad Batch, none of them. And I texted her saying, "Have you watched Ahsoka?" Because I'm very curious for people that haven't seen animated shows to see how this comes across them. One of my friends, Matt, that sometimes comments, said the same thing. He's not seen them. He knows the gist of it, like yourself, Sam, and he really liked it. And then my sister absolutely loved it. And I think like everyone, if you're not in the know on Star Wars, it sounds ridiculous, but I think Ahsoka's a character most people could now recognize, even if they've never seen Star Wars. And even if you've only watched things like The Mandalorian, she's still popped up a couple of times. She still popped up in Book of Boba Fett. So they probably are aware of who this person is. And it's just really interesting getting different people's opinions on that, actually. And again, with today's episode, part 3, the fact she's got her own mini-series that's out, and the fact it's Filoni showrunning it, I think goes such a long way in making this show. I don't think anybody else could have made this series, or at least made it to, I'd say, the quality the first 3 have shown, and we hope it's going to sort of keep up with and get better with. But what we'll do, we'll sort of go through this episode as we always do, the spoiler discussions. Not too much to go through this week, but I know there's going to be some really good discussions. And we'll kickstart first. Phil, I want to get your thoughts. We had the whole Sabine training stuff. Echoes of A New Hope. I'm imagining everyone was tweeting first thing today. I'm trying to be off social media a bit more, so I've not actually read much about this today. It's still a few messages, but I'd love to get your thoughts, just very briefly of mine. I thought it was fine, very Filoni-esque, very Lucas-esque with the training. All I'm going to say is it feels like it's a criticism. It's not. I'm really liking the fact that they're hitting home that she's not got the Force and she shouldn't be a Jedi. It sounds very elitist. Maybe because we're all normal and don't know the Force. It's like, if you don't know the Force, you can't be a Jedi. That is still my mindset. And I really appreciate what the show is doing and trying to say that, it exists with all of us, blah, 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 blah. But I love where Huron comes into it, like, no, that's not how it works. You don't have it. You're terrible. Goodbye. But I really like what they're trying to do, and I'm curious how that's going to go. Are they really going to have Sabine be a Jedi, or are we going to have her, do we think at some point she'll have the Force, or do we think it is going to be something that's cut short if we meet Ezra or she meets Ezra again? So I know that's me over-elaborating on a 5-minute training sequence, but I'm curious what everyone's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think you're being elitist by saying that. It's actually something I've gone backwards and forwards with a couple of people, Robin, who you guys know, talk about this, because in Rebels, it's very obvious when Kanan is training her with the Darksabers, like, you may not be a Jedi, but you can use your Mandalorian tactics. Fenrir gives her the bracers. It's like, look, you may not be a Jedi, but you can still fight. It's a Mandalorian thing, which is actually a gripe I get on later on the episode. Actually, I do have one gripe about this episode. But the training I like, again, Huang, I love the backwards and forwards, especially when Ahsoka's like, wait, you told her she was useless? Well, yes, obviously, they're not supposed to. But it's hammering home the point that, yes, she may not be a Jedi, but it's still teaching the Force resides in all living beings. It surrounds us, it binds the galaxy together. It's a whole Star Wars trope, but also you do get the other side of it. You do, as you said, it's the New Hope with the whole visor you can't see, but you get a sense of it, but you also get very much reinforced that no, she is not a Jedi, which may turn out to be in the end where it's a case of no, she does have some sort of power, but not anywhere near the same extent, which I think you still need Ezra to be that kind of light, as it were, of the Force, but No, I like how it's done. I also like even though Huang is kind of belittling her, even Ahsoka goes, "It's okay. You may not be this, but you are still you, and that's what I need you to be." And I really like that message behind it.
No, I completely agree. Like, I think what this kind of does successfully to me is I guess what the ending of kind of Last Jedi didn't really do for me that much. Right, it was like, oh, anyone can, everyone has the Force. It's just, at what level, what skill. Like, everyone can't just go and do it. You need to train and need to have the skills. And I think what's interesting about Star Wars as a series, we followed the Chosen One, we followed the son of the Chosen One. We've had someone like Rey who is all powerful. You've got all these three, Luke, Anakin, and Rey, who are so powerful, and we followed them. So the fact that in live action we now have a character like Sabine, who's maybe not at that level, but is still actively wanting to try and is working at it. And for me, that means more than anything, because she knows that she could potentially, and she's willing to put in the time. And so I love that. And what I love kind of maybe even more about this scene was how cool Ahsoka is. Now, for me, like, I've only the most experience I've had with Ahsoka is her earlier Clone Wars persona. So even though I've seen her later on in clips and stuff, the fact that she's so much older, wiser, and more collected is a really interesting thing. And see her be in the master role and to kind of give off all this wisdom, I think is just so amazing to see. And I think for some people it might be a bit weird because they are used to it being kind of maybe a bit more, I don't want to say upbeat, but she knows what she needs to do, and she knows what she needs to do for Sabine. So I just really loved how she's just like walking around. She knows she's gonna do what she needs to do. And Hu Yang, which is a character that I've not experienced, I don't think, at all, I absolutely adore. I would fight anyone to make sure that robot, that droid is safe, because my God, like, and maybe that's David Tennant as well, but I just think amazing. And I like that we got the time of the training as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the Who Yang stuff I love because Phil, how many Clone Wars episodes did he pop up in? Like, it wasn't just a 3-episode arc. Is it 3 episodes?
Yeah, he's.
I know it was the Padawans.
Yeah, he's in the 3 episodes.
Only that arc. And it's crazy because
because he's in the 2 where they initially taken over and the 1 where they rescue. Yeah,
and this is what I find insane in a really good way is that David Tennant is one of the most versatile actors Britain's probably produced in 20, 30 years. And there's no doubt his popularity and sort of screen status, the variety of projects he does, independent films, blockbuster films, low budget, higher budget TV shows, you name it, Tennant's done it, theatre as well. And I remember it was always this massive coup watching Clone Wars, like, is that David Tennant voicing a droid? Oh, that's cool. And I'm just so relieved that they went to him, probably 10 plus years later, whenever it was. And yeah, like, he could easily say no, and we know it's a voice role. But I just love the fact that it's not been a glorified cameo. Like, this is the droid this is the droid of the series. This isn't, Chopper's in it. I'm glad we've not got Chopper in the lead. It reminds me of BB at R2D2, and this is going to really upset some people, but one of the greatest story decisions Rian Johnson did, I don't know if you're both familiar with this, when Ryan was hired for episode 8, he was allowed to basically change 1 or 2 things right at the end of episode 7, because episode 8 was filming just before 7 came out, so the script was done as 7 was filming. And the big thing Rian Johnson did, he told J.J. Abrams, it cannot be BB-8 that goes with Rey to Luke's Island. It has to be R2-D2. And that's why R2-D2 is at the end of 7 and there in 8. Story-wise, that's absolutely the way it should have been. One of the best changes they did. Can't say the same for what was meant to have been teased up in episode 9, because it was the terrible Poe Dameron, hi, I'm Poe chat line, because we now know that Colin Trevorrow's script was going to lead to a Rey Poe story of sorts. So, yeah, sorry that's gone a tangent, but I just love the fact that Chopper should be with us, not Ezra, sorry, with Hera. And he's not. Sorry, he's with her, and we've got a new droid instead. I love the fact they've not just borrowed him for a film.
I also love it's not AP5. That makes me so happy.
Yes.
Go AP5.
And also David Tennant. There we go. You know, and it's got so much personality. And also, if you haven't watched the Clone Wars like Sam, a lot of normal people are probably thinking David Tennant's in the series, and that might be a draw to some. But also, it's nice that it's not a C-3PO droid. It's nice that it's not an R2-D2 droid. Like for the casual viewer that knows those two droids, it's something new. So I really appreciate they've gone with that, and I love how much screen time he's getting and the importance he's playing to it.
Well, that was the thing.
Dave.
I didn't even know that it was David Tennant until the credits, and then
Really?
I searched up the character, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay, I did not know this." So it was interesting to find it through that.
Sorry, I'm just loving Dave's comment of Cup once of being nil.
It's true.
It was the lingering. Yeah. It was the lingering shot on it at the end. It's like, okay, here we go. But again, very Filoni-esque, and
very.
I know Steph Green directed this episode again. She did part 2, which was very good. Yeah, moving on from some training, this is where it gets meaty. I made this the thumbnail today. We all knew Mon Mothma became the Chancellor of the New Republic, but I'm guessing the general audience doesn't know who she is, aside from Episode 6, the woman in the cloak that's now in Andor. Sam, I'm going to jump to you first. Genevieve O'Reilly returns. I know you're a big fan of hers. How do you feel about... This is going to sound really weird. I love that she's in it. Part of me wishes she wasn't in the trailer. I'll be really honest. If that had been a surprise, unless she's going to pop up every week, then I understand it. But I loved this scene because I'm just going to be the one that says it. Politics is very important within Star Wars to me. Some people don't like being said. Star Wars has always been political. The title, Star and Wars. There's no such thing as a neutral war, is there? I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this. This scene's almost split in two. Part one is, okay, we've got a Chancellor, we've got the politics here, and then we've just got Hera, skinning them alive on the other side. I loved this scene because what this is doing, it's providing context to where the series is that you don't have to watch Mandalorian to watch the series. We know in the Mandalorian that there's some remnants happening. The new Senate's not exactly the most stable. There's still issues amongst them. But I love that we had the political talk with the political leaders. And I would always go on record to say this. One of my biggest issues of Episode 7 and the sequel trilogy, and I don't actually believe this is Lucas. I guess it is Lucas's fault. Bowing down to the contextual peer pressure of we hate the prequels, we hate politics, get politics out of Star Wars, get the prequels out. They chose to consciously ignore the political landscape in Episode 7. And I understand the context of that. And we all know, looking back, I wanted it from the get-go. They didn't. They were wrong. And I think this is, again, them addressing those kinds of things, that there is political issues. It's still not clean. But this scene where the bit that just keeps springing to mind is Hera just absolutely nailing that guy. And says, did you fight in the war? Or did you just sit back and do fuck all? Because that's exactly how it would have been. I know that, again, Mandalorians mentioned those sorts of things, but I just want to get both your thoughts on this because also it is setting up Thrawn. And what I did love is, if you haven't watched Rebels, so Sam, I don't know if you know this, Genevieve Riley's in Rebels. Mon Mothma's in there. She's in a few episodes, isn't she? Well, not many.
I think it's about 6.
She has a relationship with Hera and the rest of the Rebels crew, so she's very aware of it. And I think they do a great job at reintroducing that. But I love how the moment Thrawn's name is mentioned, she's shitting herself because she knows what this means. But it's the others around her that aren't doing anything. And I just want to get both your thoughts on that scene and where you think that could pan out. Or is that going to be the only sort of political scene we get?
I don't think it's going to be the political scene we get. It might be, but I don't think so. Especially if there's more in the pipeline for Ahsoka, and not in terms of just her own miniseries, but more things leading up to Heirs to the Empire, because it's Filoni. Filoni understands the geopolitical world of Star Wars. He knows where people should be in terms of the Senate or the Republic or the Empire, the First Order. And the First Order is going to be big. As the Empire, they'll take the original, tweak it, and it'll be Thrawn coming back to set up the First Order. It'll basically do for the sequels what the Clone Wars did to the prequels. There's a lot of it coming all together, and I quite like where it's going. So I don't think it'll be the only one we see, potentially, but it could be either way. I think you'll see more but maybe more just Mon Mothma. But we'll see. But what I did like was the fact that you had Senator Ziona there, who is Kazakhstan. So if you haven't seen Resistance, you won't. No, you don't need to know, but it's a cool little just reference. So it's something that we saw in the trailers that immediately some fans picked up on. But I did love that comment from Hera of, did you fight the war, or were you just waiting to see who came out on top? She absolutely ripped them apart because she knows what Thrawn can do. And he had a very real divide between those who have faced Thrawn and those who haven't. Those who know the real threat and those who are like, it's just another Imperial officer. It's like, no. This isn't just any Imperial officer. This is Thrawn. This is the tactician.
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, love seeing the New Republic fleet and seeing. I love seeing the New Republic in some form of glory, because I feel like with what we've seen so far, it's very much like, oh, we're just trying to scramble to get things back together, and we're trying not to step on anyone's toes, is to not become a new Palpatine. We need to make sure that the power is equally divided, and that's fine. But it means that you have these people like some of those senators who were saying, well, we're all okay and we don't need to worry about this guy and whatever. So it was great to see that anyway. And I think I knew that Mon Mothma, I think she was Chancellor in Legends, wasn't she? Was she in Legends?
Yeah, she was.
Because for me, in my mind, she was always the first Chancellor after Return of the Jedi.
The first canonical mention is in Bloodlines that she takes over.
Yeah, because I definitely have one of the old Legends books that has it in. But anyway, so like even though we saw her in the trailer, I guess it's a good marketing thing for anyone who's seen Rogue One or Andor. They probably know her face by now. They know her as Mon Mothma. So it's good to see that. I guess what is probably good about having a scene like this here is that Ahsoka and Sabine are doing their thing, and rather than having Hera tag along, Hera is more, I guess, of the political link and that they can use in this. And you can tell by her interactions with Mon Mothma that they have that relationship. For anyone like me who doesn't know that, anyway, it was great to have that back and forth. And I wrote down the line, gain New Republic resources. Like these people are so afraid of another war that they're not willing to try and go that extra mile now. Yeah, to go that extra mile now to stop it. And it's very much based on real life. People are too afraid to do anything, and ultimately that can lead to bad things down the line, which of course this does. It was interesting seeing Hera get. You can see she's visibly, getting upset, angry, like she knows the threat that this is. And then bringing Ezra into it, I think then takes it even further. Obviously, she's thinking about Kanan and all of that as well. But yeah, it was good to have that scene. I don't know how many political scenes we'll get, but I think there's going to have to be some amount. I would love to see more. And I think it's good to have a balance. In this, because the series is Ahsoka, I probably don't need as much of it as we get in something like Andor, which is mostly that. But it's good to have it included. And I think really in anything Star Wars related, well, not anything, that's pushing it, but I think in a lot of Star Wars things, there's room for these types of scenes.
Yeah, very well said. And kind of in line with that, what you're talking about them bringing up Ezra, I love it's this sort of not canonical legend, but everyone's now aware of the Rebels crew, and of course, we know the reality. The films came out in 77 to 83. Rebels didn't exist until 2014 when season 1 started airing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they're can bring it into canon that these people were involved, that these were high up. General Syndulla, for example. I love where it's sort of heading with that path, and I think when the certain Grand Admiral emerges, I'd love to get a scene, not of him with Mon Mothma together, but if it's via hologram or something, I would just love to see repercussions. I think we're going to get that at some point, but I guess the main purpose of the scene is also to set up where the series is going to go. You're not going to have the New Republic helping you. You're on your own. And I like it when shows do that, because we live in this weird internet era where everything's picked apart to pieces. And I get it sometimes. I get why people do it, and some of them don't have the intentions of doing it, but you can just picture the terrible CinemaSins sort of bit like the ding sound. It's like, where was the New Republic when there's this and this and this in like a year's time? And I just think it's a great way to leave them all isolated for whatever is going to happen in the coming weeks. And a load of comments to bring up. So Ian thought episode 3 was filler. It reintroduced us to the Force, but we didn't need Luke's Bastille training for New Hope. I understand that, and I have seen a few people poke that. Dave I looked to the central reply, this is not the first time Hera used the New Republic fleet to look for Ezra. Yes. And this is the interesting one. We got our first look at Jason Syndulla. And seeing Jason with a little shoulder arm with Kanan's on, and it was lovely.
Oh.
This was a very weird moment. So I'd heard about all the Jason aggro, and to be frank, this just starts as being ridiculous. So Sam, basically, Kanan and Hera have a child, and in the epilogue to Rebels, it's green. It's like, is it green, Phil? It's like half,
green
it's
hair.
like half Twi'lek, half human. Yeah.
Well, its skin's Caucasian, hair is green.
And basically, there was a Lego set that they've re-released the Ghost, or they're about to re-release the Ghost, and it's got like the Jason from Rebels. Sorry, not from Rebels, from this in it. People were like going mad. I was like, it's a Lego minifigure. And then obviously he popped up in the episode. I'm glad that he just turned up. It wasn't this humongous reveal like, I had a partner, his name was Kanan, here's our son. I just love that he was just there on the ship. It's the way it should be. And you don't need to build up to someone that was, again, like in one shot in an animated series at the end of it. But again, it's these little things that tie it together. And I saw a great tweet from someone saying that the poetry of when Ezra inevitably ends up training Jason. And I did get a little bit excited about it. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, but I love this idea that, you know, he was trained by the father and he's going to train the son. And it's one of them. We've not had it before in Star Wars, but that's jumping way too far ahead. That's not even Ahsoka, where that story could potentially one day go. Moving on from a bit of politics, we've got to talk about the space battle. Quite comfortably, again, right? I've got the benefit of watching this for the first time at home, not at work. When Andor did the incredible, I wouldn't even call it a space battle. When dear me, I've forgotten his name. Bootstrap Bill Tanner from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, Luthen.
Luthen, thank you. When Luthen obliterated that ship, I thought, okay, this is the best I've seen Star Wars on TV. I wasn't at home watching that on my proper setup. This space battle today was incredible, and it felt like Clone Wars. It felt like I was watching a Clone Wars episode in live action. I absolutely love that we didn't get too much from two certain characters today, Baylan Skoll and Shinati. Shinati, I absolutely love every time I see her. There's something about those eyes where I think I'd let her kill me if I really had to. And it's so sadistic. But I love that there's like 2 squads of 3. It feels like, let's not just chuck loads of fighters and do nothing. It's strategic. And I had that vibe again from the Phantom Menace of there's a master and there's an apprentice. This time there's a wild Inquisitor, and the online speculation around this Inquisitor's identity is ridiculous. I don't know if I'm desperate for it to be nobody, just like an Inquisitor that's just alive. And I feel like because Star Wars fans do what Star Wars fans have done, and it's been bigged up into this humongous like quest now to find out who it is. I will say, I don't want it to be Starkiller, and people want it to be Starkiller. And a lot of people got OTT that Sam Witwer was credited last week, but Sam Witwer's provided voices to like every live action Star Wars project, and it's always credited. So that can just be ignored for now. But I really liked this battle. Very A New Hope as well. You know, they've got the guns, they've got the setup. But I will say this, there was a moment where Sabine destroys one and does the laugh. And that was the first time I felt like this is live action Rebels. And I don't mean that in disrespectful way to the first 3 episodes. But it felt like there's the character of Sabine. It's not an impersonation. She's made it her own. But that's the sort of thing, like, I think you'd see in the audition. Like, that's where you see it. That's where we know this is this character from the animated series. It's a very, very minor moment, like a second or 2. And I think Natasha did an amazing job anyway across the first 3 episodes. But it felt, again, like there's a team, like there's chemistry, and it's just something to clicking with the cast and what the story's doing. And I just loved how they were having to work together, that it's not just on Sabine to sort herself out. It is on both Sabine and Ahsoka to work with one another, not just one telling the other what to do. And I think the space battle just visually just looked superb. And I loved the designs of the ships. At first I thought, is that a General Grievous' Starfighter? Is it still going? But it's clearly a new ship. And you know what? for us, for something like Star Wars, where people moan about things being reused, I love the fact we've got some new designs. Phil's going to probably be like they're in the background to a cartoon once or something, but
They're not, and I'm loving them.
It felt very new. It felt very new and very cool. Very World War II as well.
Very much.
Yes,
so.
very World War II. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Phil, anything for that?
Yeah. So for me, this is also where my one gripe for the episode comes in, and it's a very small thing, but I love the interaction between Ahsoka and Sabine. I love them coming together. It's the family chemistry aspect. What I didn't like is the fact that when Sabine got in the gunner seat, she couldn't shoot. Like she'd lost the ability to shoot. I get the whole she's rusty from not having Jedi training, but I'm sorry, she's a Mandalorian. Her entire thing was explosive on weapons. It didn't feel that honest to the character. It's the only gripe I've got because the rest of it is fantastic. Huang having to be unplugged whilst he's scanning, whilst they're trying to get close. So the hyperspace ring was fantastic. I love the fact that they almost didn't make it through. It was a really cool scene, and those fighters were fantastic. No, that they haven't appeared in anything else. They've got a proper. Trying to pinpoint what the engine note is because you can tell they've used something in the sound design. I absolutely love it, and yeah, it felt proper Star Wars. But yeah, it had my one little gripe is that it didn't feel very honest to Sabine.
Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think I loved just before it starts. They're talking in the cockpit, and then the kind of something about non-traditional Jedi lineage or something is up there, and I thought that was really funny to have that in there just before this battle happens. For me, the ship's it did give me like a Spitfire vibes. A little bit, and it did from the distance. It did look at those. It reminded me of that Doctor episode in Matt Smith's first series, where it's a Spitfire.
Victory of the Daleks. Yep.
Yeah. It really reminded me of that, and I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. But then I saw close, and it did look like General Grievous's. So I thought it was a nice mix of ideas here. I guess there was a specific shot where it did look like it was taken straight from A New Hope, where it's kind of like a static shot of the ship, which would be like the Millennium Falcon and these other two ships flying by. It reminded me exactly like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a direct reference to that. And of course, to see that massive, because I know I didn't mention it before, but to see this massive hyperspace ring is really intriguing that kind of specific type of technology has been brought into this story. Because for me, when I remember seeing the hyperspace rings in episode 2, and I was like, it's a bit annoying to have that rather than having a ship with its own hyperdrive. But the fact that they're thinking about having all of these generators, these massive generators in it all, and then linking to something that we'll get to in a minute, is just kind of like, okay, this idea is insane, absolutely insane. But obviously it's for good reason for the villains, which is to get to Thrawn. But I guess it leads into the first think FES moment, which is Ahsoka coming out of the ship, which I loved completely. And I don't know if George, you want to say something first about that, because I thought that was so cool. And I want the action figure of Ahsoka with her two lightsabers on the ship.
That was the moment where I was like, this is live action Clone Wars, and in a really complimentary manner. That we've seen these kind of things before. I think Rebels had it actually with Ezra as well at one point, but it just felt like, again, I think only one person can pull off writing this and probably get away with it. I'm gonna have a Jedi do their lightsabers in space on a wing. Probably, okay, Dave, you do that. I'm not sure who else. No one else is going to get told yes, you can do that. But I loved what they did with this, and even I love that when it gets out of range of the fighters and the giant hyperspace ring just has the laser cannons, and they're just taking a battering and they cripple through. It's like a terrible version of Mario Kart. They cripple through the checkered flag. The fact that they're then coming in to finalize the kill, I just felt like, not that I've not seen that before, but Star Wars hasn't really been able to do those kinds of things in live action. Understand that you can't really do that in a film. You don't have the patience of slowing down, a crashing ship and whatnot. But just the moment of Ahsoka coming out, stalling for time, showing the weakness of the villains, that they're just thinking of the kill for her, not the ship. You know, it's totally in play. The very typical Jedi Sith type vibes you're getting there. And again, Shinati, every time it cut to her in the cockpit, I loved their little on-screen thing. Almost had a delayed sort of moving thing. Don't know what you'd call them, like on the map. But I just love the design. I love how they shot, and I really appreciate how that action sequence went, because it's a great way of saying, you know, this hyperspace ring, like, don't like fuck around with it. It's gonna kill them all. And they didn't just zip through fine, because then that makes that look terrible. The fact they just barely survived to make it through to that next part, I think it's a really smart way of doing it. Again, people at home who might have seen stuff, they get to see Sabine doing some repair work. It's a great way of building up some of where the character's journey is going and what they're capable of doing, and sort of just the hyperspace ring as well. Like, I'm really happy, and this isn't a dig at 7. It sounds like it might be. I'm just so happy that they did just get a map. Like, right, guys, it's this place. Let's go. Like, I love it. It's not that. It's like we still have to finish this like monstrosity of a machine to even get to where we need to go. We know where we're going to go now, but it's not like set out in stone that we can do it. And it feels like there's something bigger in play. And Dave put a comment as well. The Kevin Kindness score. Unbelievable. I'm so glad he's doing a live action. We're probably going to be saying that every week. He also put he loved that it felt like pure Clone Wars Rebels and getting outside. And I was going to kind of think about this actually as well. This feels like there's been a lot more sets than the volume, but I don't know if it's a better shot, and I'm being forward. That's the kind of the blessing of it. It shows the text working if it's working. And I love the fact it's a really minor thing. I love that the ship comes out of the ground, because it's like, oh, they've actually had to build a set. I know that Filoni's done an interview. I don't know when the interview was, because obviously the strikes, but he spoke about his Star Wars film, saying that he will use as much sets as he can. He's not just basically, I'm going to go shoot on the volume for a year, whenever it's going to be. He wants to do as much as he can in you know, on set. And I think, really, speculation point, they've got to do it like Andor now, right? Build your sets. If you need to use the volume, use the volume. You need to use the volume on the windows. Samir at the ILM talk at Celebration, they said that they only use the volume to use as the windows on Coruscant, so they could get the reflections on the table. Which
Insane.
That's correct, and that's how real life would be. And I really hope that, again, this isn't a dig at the volume, because it's an unbelievable piece of technology that's still so early in its days. I really hope they're seeing how it gets the best out of it, and it's not about let's just do it on here because we can. Let's do it on here when we know we can't do it on a set or on location. And it's really good that Filoni is saying this kinds of things already, because the approach to Ahsoka, I mentioned last week, the production design felt like the best we've had, not including Andor, of the other TV shows. It really feels like that, even for an episode set in space, when they go to the forest at the end, and it's very, very Japanese cinema, the symbolism of the red leaves, the red forest, and we know what Filoni's like with those, you know, old school influences. And yeah, it's just really exciting seeing where it's going to go, and where not just the story and his direction. I know he didn't direct today, but I feel like we're in the early days of Dave Filoni's like live action Star Wars tenure, and that in a disrespectful way, which isn't intended. Mandalorian now really feels like Favreau's show, and Ahsoka really feels like Filoni's show. I know that it's Favreau and Filoni together on Mando, but part of me wonders is Filoni always looking at not ways around it, but was Filoni always getting ready for that Ahsoka series, which we know has always been his goal to do eventually. And I'm really randomly speculating now, but yeah. Anyone got anything else to say on the space battle?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
the fact that beforehand I mentioned to you in the build, I love Kevin Kindner's score for this episode. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Dave's come, but also what I love is a really, really tiny piece of fan service for me is the fact that Shin Hati's also got the same little band for the headcom that Annie and Obi have in episode 2 and 3. It's like, it's such a little thing, but it's so cool. There's
been some really good speculation on the end goal for Baylan Skoll, Ray Stevenson's character. I didn't speculate too much of this. I know he wasn't really in today's episode except like the final shot, but there's a lot of people think that he's not working with Thrawn, he's not working with the good guys, that he's going to be his own entity of trying to right the wrongs of the past. And I don't know if I said this last week or we spoke about it, but I actually think the stuff with him and Shin Hati has been my favorite of the series, because I think they're on their own story. I think they're on their own event. I don't want to call it an adventure. I think there's going to be some wild stuff happening, and the best theory I've seen is on Thrawn's ship. Is it called the Chimera?
It's the Chimera.
The world between worlds was rebuilt onto that, which is something that I completely forgot. Sam's like, okay, I've not watched Rebels. Maybe it's going to get past me, which is fine. I'm not going to start talking about the world between worlds, but essentially he could be doing his own thing, and I'm really curious where that's going to go. And there's been murmurs about certain actors appearing in this series. There's been murmurs about certain timelines appearing in this series. I think Balin is potentially going to be the standout character for the series in a really nice way. And obviously at the same time, it's also devastating that we did lose Ray Stevenson this year as well. Dave's actually just put a comment about that. The shot of him closing out the episode. Yeah, there's a presence there. And the one thing Star Wars should always have is that presence. And you've had it from the first ever time you meet Darth Vader. You've had it to physically imposing actors to certain characters. But there's just something about him that feels totally unfamiliar while so familiar at the same time. And it's like the enigma for me that's surrounding the series is what is his plan? What's his strategy? Because obviously we know that the blue guy is going to turn up at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say actually, because I mean, I don't know, I can't remember if you mentioned last week, but there is Jedi Survivor vibes to some of this stuff, especially with kind of going to a far place that no one can get to, through normal circumstance, and now it's going to this other galaxy. And for me, with the villains, it is are we gonna be? Are we going through a misstep or something? Are we focusing on? Obviously, we've got these they're not Sith, they're not Jedi. We don't really know who they are. They are here and we can see them. Yet they seem so kind of in front of us that we're kind of ignoring because we're looking at the bigger picture, which is Thrawn and what's going to happen there. But are we then not focusing enough on these two and what's actually going to happen? And I think that I love the mystery. I love how mysterious this is, and that we're not being kind of force-fed stuff. It really is. I know we're only 3 episodes into this, but it feels like it's very natural. And so I'm hoping it will be a great surprise. And I do know about the World Between Worlds, and it seemed complete craziness when I first heard about it. But that opens up numerous possibilities. It's just there's so much within this world and within Filoni's kind of era that he's brought to the table that could be unlocked through live action, which is just amazing, and I just want to see what happens.
No, absolutely, and kind of following that, we'll talk before we get in. Okay, well, we mentioned the red trees and the setup for next week, but Phil, I know you want to talk about the Purgle. In the trailers, we knew they were coming. I didn't expect them in episode 2, I guess I can say, and it makes me wonder: are they going to be involved with this big hyperspace trip? I'm going to assume is next week or the end of next week. And they looked, again, phenomenal. They looked incredible. And it wasn't just let's fly past one and wave. That's not a Mandalorian dig. I just realized Baby Yoda did that. But I know that was almost teased in the Mandalorian that, yeah, these are coming at some point this year. Great sequence. And again, the way I'd classify that, the way I'd also classify, seeing Mon Mothma earlier, it's that tick list of every shot we've seen off the trailer. Let's keep it going. There's I could be incredibly wrong, but I have a gut feeling that the only thing that we've not seen that was from the first trailer now is obviously Ray Stevenson in the World Between Worlds. And, well, whether it's that, it looks like it's him holding a lightsaber on the map point now. And, of course, a certain Grand Admiral Thrawn, who waits patiently in the editing suites for the worlds to witness him. I think the internet's going to break when he turns up. But that aside, Phil, thoughts on the Purgle? I don't really have an opinion on it. It was a cool sequence for me, but it might mean a lot more to other people.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the silhouette of the Purgle at the end of episode 2 in the clouds. You saw something. You knew it was coming. And yes, one of the last things to tick off from the trailer. But they looked absolutely phenomenal. And they are going to be, to quote Rebels, follow the Purgle. It was the Purgle in Rebels showed them how they could travel hyperspace. It then leads very much into the fact that if you watch the credits, you look at all the The drawings from the big map, again, the Purrgil used for that. So the wolves were used for the world between worlds. The Purrgil look like they're between galaxies, let alone just hyperspace. So I think the Purrgil are very, very important. Like they were in Rebels for just hyperspace, I think this is now, as I said, to quote Rebels, it's follow the Purrgil.
Lovely. And Sam, do you know anything about them? I don't mean that in like a really crude way.
No, all I know is that they are part of the reason that, or they are the reason that Thrawn and Ezra went. That's all I know, but I don't know any more about them. But I guess it kind of, I like that one, that this whole sequence with the ships and stuff is that it's kind of like in 3 parts a little bit, and that I'm glad that it wasn't just a short scene. It was like the first part is trying to get to the hyperspace ring and going through that battle. Then we've got a damaged ship and Ahsoka's spacewalk, and then we have in the atmosphere chase through these Purrgils. And it just, for me, it was so dynamic, and it didn't bore me at all, and it felt again very natural. And I feel like we've been very limited in what we've been able to get sometimes, either because it's of budgetary or anything else, to actually make those types of scenes work. But it did feel like I could have seen that on the big screen, this whole sequence, this whole episode, this whole series so far, that I could have seen this on the big screen, and I would have been like, yep, I expect this from a film. And again, it makes me go, just show this in the cinema. I feel like me and George said that so many times, like earlier this year, just show it in the cinema. But yeah, and I think the actual planet itself, again, with the visuals, the red leaves looked gorgeous. I'm so glad that they chose that style. And Ray Stevenson just looks amazing. And I'm sad that we didn't see more of in this episode, but I'm sure we'll see more next.
100%. And that's kind of where we're going to round out today. A bit shorter than last week, 30-minute episode. An unbelievable episode for 30-minute runtime as well, actually. I know that Chapter 2 of The Mandalorian was one of those when we had the Jawa stuff, which I remember. And there's nothing wrong with a short episode, the way I always sort of see these sorts of things. It's not about the length, it's about sort of what you're doing with it. And it's one of them where I don't mind if 1 week's going to be 30 minutes, because that budget can be reallocated somewhere else for a 15-minute episode. And you don't want to just pad in the writing you don't want to start writing next week's episode and then it just doesn't make sense when it gets to it. So narratively, stopping, in the forest is the right thing to do. We know the setup for next week, that they're going to be hunted down. And I'm very curious at where that's going to go and what it's heading towards. But aside from that, if I'm going to give my final thoughts on today's episode, it's a solid 3rd episode of the series. I can't really complain. I've got no faults of it. Glaringly, I get some issues with it. Some people might struggle with the training stuff at the start, which people have mentioned, which is fine. But to me, I thought it was a pretty great episode. And again, a follow-up to the first 2. And what I always say about shows, series, certainly mini-series, this is a one-and-done series, which they are advertising it as. It's really hard to cast judgment on an individual episode until the story picture is complete. Sam, I know when we did Last of Us, we're in that sort of same vibe, weren't we? Where some episodes were longer, some were shorter, some of them were 2 parts within a 10-episode series. And I just think with this episode is, I'm not calling it filler because that's a term that's overused in a 1,000,000%. But this is the sort of, what episode of Andor was it? It was after the prison, but before the finale, and it was like one episode sort of, I'm trying to think of the right term for it. It's like narratively it's between like A and B, right? Yeah, a bridge episode. And it's one of them where I feel this has had that we've had the post reintroduction, and now we're going to set up that adventure a little bit more, get the characters into the right places for next week, where it's probably going to ramp up. And next week's being directed by Peter Ramsey, who worked on Into the Spider-Verse, co-directed that. Did an episode of The Mandalorian this year, and like Filoni, he's going from sort of animation into live action, which is really cool. But sorry, my final thoughts. Part 3, loved it. Part 4, cannot wait to get up early and watch it at a ridiculous time. But it meant I got to do the artwork early before work, which is always a bonus. But yeah, Phil, final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. I thought it was a cracking episode. So the score is one of my favorites that kind of done thus far. That's all of Clone Wars and Rebels included. This was up there, it really was. And although it was 30 minutes, you got what you paid for in terms of short, sharp, lot of cool stuff, and
Yeah.
didn't drag. It was just what you needed.
Yeah, I said to the guys before it started, I'd rather it be kind of compact, short, and I want more rather than outstaying its welcome. And it absolutely, did what it needed to do. I agree about the filler comment. I feel like filler to me is when you could lift an episode or whatever it is out of a series, out of film, whatever, and it wouldn't make any difference. Whereas I think this episode did enough to make it a bridging episode, and otherwise we'd have questions about where are the New Republic, why are they not coming, how did Ahsoka and Sabine get to the planet really easily. Like there's a lot of things that wouldn't have worked if this episode wasn't here, and what the episode did was done to such a great extent. I loved everything about it. Yeah, I just can't wait for the next one now.
Definitely. And with that in mind, we are going to be back next week, same time, 10 p.m. next Wednesday, for another spoilers discussion, part 4. Title unknown at this point, as is the running time, but we will be live to cover it as we always do. And whenever everybody watching at home, so if you are watching live, thank you for those that have been commenting along. If you're not watching live, let us know your thoughts. We'll have a look at those. We will reply to those. And as I said, join us next week. If you want to help support the channel, do hit the like button, subscribe. It does help us reach our channel goals moving forward. As I mentioned, we're in a very, very busy period. If you want to find out about other announcements, you're best off finding us on our social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. It's got links to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and so on. There's so many things happening. We'll be back on Monday with our review for Seven. Of course, part of the David Fincher retrospective, an incredible, incredible film, pre-recorded, and his new film's premiering at Venice this week. So a lot of new releases, a lot of older films, a lot of Star Wars. It's good to be busy. And as always, we're going to thank all of you for support, both of you for jumping on your spare time tonight. So thank you both. Thank you everyone watching at home, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
See ya.